Okay, it gives me great pleasure to bring on stage to you Mr. Dr. Horst Filtzer. Come on out, Dr. Filtzer. Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Good.
Yep.
Hey, this is on?
Yep, you're on.
Good morning. In the last several years, my email has been inundated with advertisement for age management courses. And I did look into it a little bit and found that it was sort of a new concept that you can get accreditation by the AMA for a subspecialty of age management, but I decided for myself that the price was too high. And the price not just for the course, but also for what it offered and what it would cost patients, because none of these things are covered by insurance. So I looked at it a little bit and was reminded of the fact that Mr. Oshiro has been speaking for years about the fact that he doesn't get old. Now, I will assure you that he will get old and show you what the stages he and every one of us is going to go through. The other person on this opening slide here, the guy who's all muscular, is Dr. Jeffrey Life, and he's probably the biggest proponent of medical age management. Now, getting old is not for the faint of heart, as I'm beginning to find out now that I'm 72. And the principle of medical age management is surrounded by hormone therapy. I submit it makes little sense to me that to give growth hormone to a geezer whose bones can't support the additional muscle that he's going to form, and also have no studies that support the efficacy of this. So I'm more inclined to side with Mr. Oshiro, and I thought that I would go through some basic facts on aging, and the first one being the stages of aging. And I call it from the womb to the tomb. There's an X-rated version of that, which I'll share with you off stage. But basically, from the time of conception to the time of our demise, we carry this body which undergoes definitive degradation. Sorry. This is not, something's wrong with the mic. What am I sure? All right. Okay? Better? Yeah. This is not a voluntary process. There's nothing you can do about it. Aging will progress to the ultimo, but there are ways of aging that are probably more palatable and also less painful and distressful, and that we like to call healthy aging. Now, improving with age, cheese does, port wine, good whiskey, some hams, they improve with age. Unfortunately, we do not. Our skin gets wrinkly, bones lose calcium, muscles get wasted, vision decreases, hearing decreases, and depression is common, and one becomes slightly more prone to infectious diseases and degenerative diseases. So as you can see on the slide, the progression is downward. However, in order to age healthy and gracefully, you've got to say to yourself, screw old age, basically. Do the very best you can with the time allowed. And I'm hoping that maybe I can make some suggestions today, and that you can pass these suggestions on to prospective clients of yours, because quite frankly, I can show you scientifically that there is evidence out there that ionized alkaline water helps with the aging process. Normal aging is intrinsic. It has a negative effect on bodily functions. It's progressive, but it is not a disease. And many factors can affect it detrimentally and favorably. Favorable factors in aging are genetics, number one factor. If your parents got to live to a ripe old age, you probably will also. If it's in your family that people live to be 100, you may very well live to be 100. Stress is probably the number two factor that affects aging. Reduced stress, a stress-free life, is absolutely favoring towards getting a good, ripe old age. And a healthy lifestyle. You know, as I'll show you, that's a hard thing to define because some zealots will say that, well, all you got to do is eat raw vegetable, that's healthy. But the evidence of diet specifically favoring aging in a favorable way is scant. Anyway, we'll get to it. Healthy relationships are important. The fact that you will associate with people of your kind and people who you have empathy with and people you share common things with, like vacations and so on and so forth, people that are close to you, that helps aging. Family is very, very important. And lifetime learning. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. Was sitting on his park bench in a park in Brookline, Massachusetts, when he was 91 years old, and was reading. Passerby came and said, "Your Honor, why are you reading?" And he looked up, he said, "Young man, I want to learn something." And that's the key. An inquisitive mind and always trying to improve that helps in our aging problem. Recreation, hobbies, love somebody. You know, intimacy is very important. And so is moderation. I think that most of the detrimental effects on the aging process are caused by excesses. Excessive drinking, smoking, drugs, this, that, and the other thing. And they're not always driven by the person themselves. Doctors have responsibility for that, as I will show you. Spirituality, I think you need to believe in something. And it's not for me to say what that may be, but it is important that when you have something you believe in, that you're passionate about it, it will help you live a longer life. Now, what about bad things? Well, the most important one, again, is genetics. If you come from a family where people, you know, live to be 50, it's not good. Sedentary lifestyle, the old use it or lose it. If you don't move, if you don't rock and roll, and if you don't live in this life in the mainstream, you're going to wither away. You don't have that reinforcement that an active life gives you. Smoking is the worst thing that anybody can do for the aging process. It knocks off a minimum of 10 years off your life, and that's absolutely correct. Excessive anything, alcohol, drugs, food, etc. One of the most interesting studies I learned about was done in teenagers who came from abusive homes where they were really, you know, treated very, very badly. They did microscopic analyses, electron microscopic analyses, and that showed that the telomeres, which are the supporting strands of DNA, were shortened prematurely. Telomeres get shortened over the time of our aging, and eventually, when they get too short, the cell undergoes apoptosis, which is cell death. And in young people who had bad abusive relationships in their family, etc., this occurred prematurely. That's really something to think about. Mood disorders shorten your lifespan. If you're depressed, you may even commit suicide. So these kind of things do in fact need therapy, need adjustment if you want to live longer. And medication. It blew me away, but the Framingham study in Massachusetts that's been going on for 40 years on heart disease showed that if you are on Coumadin or warfarin as a blood thinner for your heart disease, it significantly shortens your lifespan. And there are other drugs that do that as well. People don't tell you because it's a trade-off usually. You can't let somebody have atrial fibrillation and die of a stroke. On the other hand, taking the drug warfarin by itself shortens lifespan. And then, of course, illnesses, intercurrent illnesses will shorten your lifespan. And here are some hard, cold facts. 13% of the US population right now is over 65. The over 65 population is the largest growing segment of our population in the US. And the cost for health care at the older ages is going to be unsustainable within the next 10 years. We're simply going to run out of money. The aggressive age management can reverse that trend. But the key to that is healthy living and a reduction in the incidence of disease. And of course, the biggest costs for aged populations is that for health care. So that the promotion of healthy living and the practice of that has the biggest hope to get us out of this financial mess. This is our concept of getting old in America. A couple of geezers crossing the road, elderly people being locked away in nursing homes. By 2030, the population of 65 and older will be 71.5 million. And the cost for nursing home care and elder care is going up at an exponential rate according with the population. Yet, not everybody who is old is akin to that picture on the right. Look at Warren Buffett. He's 85. Queen Elizabeth is 87. Hugh Hefner is 84 because he has all these babes around him, and that probably would, kind of keep you young. And Betty White is 90, works every day of her life. So there is healthy and kind of, good aging. Medical age management uses traditional evaluation of the patient with a history, physical, ultrasounds, lab tests, etc. And then what they do is check you out for your hormone levels. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to know that if you're 72, your testosterone is probably not the same as when you're 16. So they take all of these factors into account and then pump you up with human growth hormone, chorionic gonadotropin, thyroid, testosterone, estrogen, progesterones, and probably some others. Oh, B12 seems to be a very popular thing to get shot up with to retard aging. But there is no hard evidence that it really does that much good. We don't have studies of it. And it costs a lot of money. Cenegenics is one of the outfits that Dr. Life, the one on the title slide, promotes, and you can take his course and then you can become an age management doctor, and it's all cash and it's all very expensive. The American Academy of Age Management Medicine will also certify you. There are clinics all over the country. Florida is inundated with them, and you can even do this by mail. You can mail in a health questionnaire, and then they will mail you 4 pounds of drugs. Cost about $6,000 a month, and you can inject yourself and not get old. Don't believe it. Now, I've got to put in the Harvard connection because these two men, Dr. Joseph Murray and Dr. Alexander Leaf, I had the great honor of actually meeting them and being their student. Dr. Leaf was a nephrologist and professor of medicine at the Massachusetts General Hospital. One of the sweetest, nicest, most wonderful men I've ever known, who just lived for learning and teaching. And then Joe Murray, professor and chairman of surgery, Peter Brent Brigham Hospital, Nobel laureate, first person to do a kidney transplant in the United States successfully. And both of these men had strokes just around their retirement time from Harvard, and they suddenly got interested in, how much longer were they going to live, having had a stroke and so on. And they did what you do at Harvard. You apply for government grants, and then they let them study aging by giving them free trips throughout the world. And here are some of their conclusions and observations. The Hunza Valley and the Caucasus were allegedly places where people lived practically forever. You would see 150 years old, or so they say. As it turns out, that isn't quite true, but there were isolated areas in the Caucasus in particular where people did live to a quite ripe old age. And so they tried to figure out what the factors were in allowing us to live to such an old age, and it turns out it's respect for older people. Here you see on the one slide a really old man surrounded by children, and he's telling them stories and fairy tales and what have you, and the people of that age are highly respected. It turns out that many of the centenarians in the Caucasus smoked, but not like we do. They smoked 3 cigarettes a day maybe. They all drank. I mean, there's no question about it. Vodka was sort of a staple of the diet in the Caucasus, and it's a dairy-rich diet. So basically, no single factor was found that accounted for this longevity. The conclusion was that really being active, enjoying life, and family was probably the best catalyst for an old age. Japan has the longest longevity in our world. And the number is wrong on the slide. We are number 28. Now, it's interesting that Japan also has the largest number of centenarians. 5 in every 100,000 people in the US are over 100 years old. And it is estimated that by 2050, centenarians will be the fastest growing population group in the United States. And studies of centenarians show no preponderance or dietary factors and so on that are unique to them. Now, in Japan, on the island of Okinawa, 50 in 100,000 people are over 100 years old. That's 10 times what we have here. Dietary factors are not unique or unusual, but calorie count is. The Japanese eat far fewer calories per day than we do. Alcohol consumption is actually quite common, but strong family dynamics and respect for old age and activity are considered to be the greatest contributors towards a long life. So here's sort of a prescription for healthy aging. Be productive, exercise, diet, etc. I can't emphasize stress reduction enough because that is really very, very detrimental, and it is really something we can all do something about. Now, by studying aging in other countries like Japan, we can learn what works for them. We can invest in a healthy lifestyle. Disease can be dramatically ameliorated by a healthy lifestyle. And learning about factors that reverse oxidative stress, we can use countermeasures to improve it. And being well informed, we can also choose what is best for us. Now, here are some references in regard to the function of electrolyzed reduced water, aka ionized alkaline water, kangenwater. It reduces oxidative stress. It cures hangovers in rats. Now, why is that important? Because it assists the liver in detoxifying the poison, the alcohol, and that's proven scientifically. It also helps in hemodialysis. Researchers used ionized alkaline water in the bath for the coils for your hemodialysis. And they found that the renal failure patients did much, much better. Their pHs went up, they were more alkaline and not as acidotic, and they actually felt better being dialyzed with that type of water, and of course the appropriate electrolytes. So this is a potential medical use for reduced water. Also, it is absolutely clear that ionized alkaline water alters the pH. If you have an acidotic person, an acidotic animal, you can immediately reverse that acidosis with alkaline ionized water alone. And this is a study coming out of Egypt, and it is absolutely profound because that's the first time it's been shown in a mammalian system, in a dog actually, that this occurs. And prior to that, that was all conjecture. So we have facts. Now, what about flatworms, you ask? Where the heck did that come from? Well, I found out flatworms are kind of unique creatures. You can cut them in half and they'll regenerate. That's very, very interesting because people are doing studies on that phenomenon because they think that there may actually be a way to significantly prolong life if we understood what allows these animals to regenerate. But if you let them live in they live in water, okay? But if you let them live in ionized alkaline water, it prolongs the lifespan of these animals by 40%. Now that's pretty interesting. We're not flatworms, but it suggests that cellular integrity and cellular function is mediated favorably by ionized alkaline water. Here are some other references in that regard. And I can actually email them to anybody who wants them, but it shows how the water has an effect on oxidative stress, how it prevents RNA and DNA damage, and how it actually helps preserve cells that are being attacked by foreign substances, poisons, etc. Particularly interesting in diabetics, it's shown that alkaline ionized water doesn't cure the diabetes per se, it just removes obstacles that allow more insulin to get into the cells. And by doing that, a diabetic who is requiring large amounts of insulin will notice a substantial reduction in the insulin need. And some milder diabetics may not need any at all. So what about microclustering? Recently, I have been made aware of a bunch of posts in social media challenging the existence of microclustering, saying that it really doesn't exist. And let me disavow you of that right now because it does in fact exist and always has. The number of clusters that water forms in nature are legion. They go all the way from 256 molecular aggregates to dimers, which is 2 molecular aggregates. It is a constantly dynamic turning over of these molecules, lasting just a few seconds, but every time one decays, another one comes up, and so microclustering is there. It is firmly believed, and there's a lot of solid research, that by using electrolysis, one can reduce the number of clusters, and the pentamer and the hexamer, the so-called hexagonal water, has in fact been shown to exist by nuclear magnetic resonance, which is in the middle of this slide, and shows that it is half the resonance of tap water. The people on in the picture are Roderick McKinnon and Peter Agre, both Nobel laureates for the discovery of aquaporins, which are the entry into the cell of water. Now, we firmly know, just from our own a priori knowledge, that this water is more quickly and better absorbed. We also know that cells emit one molecule at a time. And therefore, the water gets into your bloodstream much more quickly. And because 6 versus larger molecular aggregates, it will also ultimately get into the cell more quickly. And that is very well established, and certainly Enagic endorses that concept. Now, the value of good hydration. Now, these are studies that have nothing to do with alkaline ionized water. They just have to do with water per se. There are a couple of studies from Germany that show that the incidence of chronic disease, like arthritic conditions and various chronic asthmatic conditions and so on and so forth, can be dramatically changed by adequate hydration. Every single person in a nursing home is dehydrated. I defy you to find me one that is not. They're all dehydrated. You go into a nursing home, into many nursing homes, not all, and you have this horrible stench of concentrated urine. That tells it right there. People are not getting enough water, and just adequately and thoroughly hydrating people has a dramatic effect on their health, on their resistance to disease, and on their longevity. Now, what about antioxidants? We say that Kangen water is an antioxidant. It has antioxidant properties because we can measure the ORP. I have been trying to get this established as an actual function that raises the antioxidant level in the blood. And that's been a difficult thing to do because of the tests that are available, the so-called ORAC tests that don't react well with water. I came across a reference recently where they took young people and gave them apple juice to drink, which is high in antioxidant properties. They would then measure the ORAC level in their blood and then give another group 50% apple juice and 50% ionized alkaline water. So you would think that their ORAC level would drop. Instead, it was higher than the apple juice only group, which indicates clearly the antioxidant activity of the water is there. You can't have, W value if you give less juice. And this is the first time I've actually seen that expressed in the literature. And hopefully more of that will come, because this is, again, a concept that we firmly believe in. Again, here are several articles that you can peruse on the effectiveness of antioxidants and the fact that as we get older, we require larger supplementation of antioxidants because our digestive processes aren't as good, and so on and so forth. So the availability of antioxidants as part of an anti-aging or as part of a healthy program is firmly established and necessary. Now, who is the oldest person in this group of pictures? Anybody know? Well, it's Sophia Loren. She's 78, just above Mr. Oshiro. And every other person in that picture, Raquel Welch and, oh God, what was her name? Anyway, they're all 72. Everyone else is 72. Sophia Loren is 78. Looks pretty good to me. Now, does Kangen water support healthy aging? The number one factor in defense against illness and aging is hydration. There's no question about it. You can take it to the bank. Antioxidants are found to be necessarily increasingly as we get older and to fight oxidative stress. pH regulation through the alkalinity is extremely important, and supplementation with vitamins, etc., gives you all the ingredients that promote optimum health and age with grace. So my professional advice to you is reduce stress, grow tomatoes or something, go fishing, but reduce stress. Read a book, take a course, listen to music. Eat a healthy diet and avoid excesses. I will not endorse any single one diet. Everybody can pick and choose. They're actually all good or all bad, depending upon how you use them. Don't smoke, and be compassionate and hate no one. Hate eats at people's souls, and eventually you will pay the price. Laugh a lot, get a good night's sleep, and drink Kangen water 9.5, 1/2 ounce per pound of body weight. Fred Brown likes it. Jan Stratton says the athletes like it. Fido likes it. He feels like a puppy again. And I like it.